Hey, Mike with Nerd Problems Gaming here, and today's video will be doing a review and how to play video on Monster Hunter World, the board game, Ancient Forest, so let's get into it. Alright, now that we have the game out, let's walk you through a bit on how you play the game, and then I'll jump into my review after that. Now, Monster Hunter World, the board game, is quite complex, so I definitely will not go through every single rule. You'll definitely need to refer to the rule book for every detail, but I'll go through a bit on some of the basics on how you set up the game and how you play so you have a better idea on how it works. And then again, we'll jump into more of my review after that. And so the game itself is a cooperative board game where players will work together to take down massive monsters throughout the Monster Hunter world. And the overall goal of the game is to defeat a 4-star monster. And so the game itself will be more of a campaign, and it has a feel of an action RPG in really a board game format. And so to start off the game, players are going to choose which characters they want to play as. For example, there's several different character types to choose from. There's a sword and shield character, we have a bow character, a greatsword character, as well as a dual blade character. But in this example setup, I'm going to be playing with the bow character as well as the sword and shield character. And so you want to find the equipment guide card that really breaks down the equipment that you'll be able to acquire throughout your campaign. In this case, we're playing a 2-player game, and in a 1- and 2-player game, you're going to take the Palico cards, shuffle them up, give each player 2, and they'll choose 1 to keep throughout their campaign. You'll also want to set up your character's base cards and stamina board. And so each player will get a stamina board. You'll get a life token dial, set the health to 8. Players will also get a character stat sheet. This will track your progress throughout the game. So make sure each player has that. Fill out their player name, the campaign name, their hunter name, a Palico name, if you're playing a 1- and 2-player game. And you'll also be able to track the campaign days on the bottom here of this sheet. Now to set up, you'll have some base equipment. So in this case, for the bow hunter character, the starting equipment is an iron bow, chainmail headgear, chainmail vest, and chainmail trousers. And you can refer to the rule book to see what starting equipment players will have. You also want to set up the damage deck. And so to determine what goes in there, look at your starting weapon. In this case, the iron bow will have 8 cards of 1 damage and 4 cards of 2 damage. So you'll take that, build that deck, shuffle this up, and then you'll want to put that face down in your damage deck area. You'll also find the attack and ability cards for your character based on the starting equipment your character has. And so this is based on, again, the starting weapon, and this is laid out in the rule book what cards you'll take. It's based on the numbers in the bottom right corner here. Again, you can shuffle these up and then put these face down to form a draw pile in this area. You'll also want to take these hunter tokens, shuffle them up, and give each player 1. This is indicating a hunter's threat level, and so in certain scenarios, this will indicate which hunter the monster will attack. So again, shuffle these up, give each player 1 of them. You'll also need to determine which quest you're going to challenge to start the game. Now this Great Jargus quest, the assigned quest, is actually the first one that you'll take on. And so you'll set up the board according to the image here on this page. And then it also gives you some insights on building the time limit, the scout fly level, and the starting point. And so you can see I've set up the board according to what that quest starting point looks like in the quest book. There's various start points on the board that your players can choose from. And so we've placed our hunters there accordingly. We've also added terrain tokens on the board. And you can refer to the rule book what it means when you land on one of those tokens, as these can change from quest to quest. You'll also want to find the physiology card that matches the quest that you're on. And so again, we're doing the 1-star quest for Great Jargus. So I want to set this out on the board. It also indicates the creature's health points. So I'll set the health dial to 50. And it also indicates some information about the monster, things like breaking points and benefits that happen if you do that, as well as some special abilities for the monster. So you'll have the health tracker here, for example, for the monster set out. You'll also want to set out all of these track tokens to the side, as you'll be drawing these throughout more of a choose your own adventure style exploration portion before getting into the monster fight. Another thing you'll set up is the behavior card deck for the monster. And so just look at the back here. It has an indicator on the monster and their specific action deck. And so take all of these cards and put them together and set them off to the side. Each monster will also have different moves that are labeled with the track token. Set these off to the side and you'll actually be adding one of these to the base action deck depending on the outcome of your choose your own adventure portion of the game. You'll also be building a time deck, and so there's these time cards you'll find throughout the game. There's versions with a blue symbol and a red symbol. The blue symbols are more of the base foundation time deck cards, and the red symbols will be potentially added depending on the choices you make during that exploration choose your own adventure portion. Again, depending on what quest you're taking on, this one, for example, says 35 time cards. So you'll shuffle the time card deck with all the blue cards and take 35 of those out, and that will form your base time card deck for this first quest. Also set the dice off to the side, as you'll be using those during the reward portion after you've defeated a monster. You also want to build an elemental damage deck. These are similar style cards to your personal damage deck, but these stay off to the side and will be activated if you happen to do an effective elemental attack. And so again, with this basic setup in place, we'll go through the different phases of the game so you have a better idea on how that works as well. And so the first step is selecting your quest. In this case, we're doing this most basic version of the Great Jargus quest. And so you would find that in the quest book. Again, this begins with distributing these hunter tokens, building that time deck based on the number of cards the quest suggests, setting up the tracker tokens on the side, setting up your hero's stamina boards, and setting up the game board. And so some things to note is that you'll want to start with the first quest here labeled in the book. Another thing that it mentions is the assigned starting point. And so how that works is you'll just go into the quest book and find assigned starting point 1. You'll read the narrative here, and then it gives you the next steps to take. And so again, in this case, you would discard one time card and gain a track token, and then you'd go to entry 21. And so this is kind of the choose your own adventure portion of the game. And so as you can see here on 21, there's some more flavor text, gives you an indication on what your characters should do. So you would gain a monster bone medium in this case, and then you have some choices. And so players will decide amongst each other which option they want to take. And again, you'll kind of go through this choose your own adventure style portion of the game where you'll be gathering resources, making decisions, drawing the track tokens, and then eventually you will get to the point of needing to determine your scout fly level. And so it gives you some options. So depending on the track number that you drew, you'll add a specific attack from the monster here. And so when you're drawing these track tokens, initially you'll have them face down, not knowing what they are. But at this point, it will tell you to reveal all your track tokens. And so in this case, I have a total of 3 track tokens that I revealed throughout that choose your own adventure phase of the game. At that point, I'm going to look at the scout fly level of the quest that I'm taking on. So this one says 2 to 5, and I drew 3. And so again, you can see here, if you finish the adventure equal to or fewer than the tracks, then the minimum, you add that move. In this case, I finished with more than tracks than the minimum, but fewer than the maximum. So I would add Jargus Spit in this case. And it also gives you an option at the bottom kind of indicating what star level you might have taken on. So if you were doing the assigned quest, which is the 1 star, it shows you that level is 2 to 5. And if you went more difficult options, the scout fly level would increase from there. Again, that's going to determine what move you're going to add to the action deck. So in this case, it said I should add Jargus Spit. So I'm going to shuffle this into the action deck for the monster. Again, simply shuffle these up and set them off to the side face down, so you don't necessarily know what's coming. All right, so now that we've finished the gathering phase, we're going to move on to the hunting phase, which is taking on the monster. And so the hunting phase is broken up into 3 different steps. We have the monster turn, the hunter turn, and then checking to see if you completed the quest. And so the monster will start their turn by drawing the top card of their behavior deck and then following the steps on that card. And so again, we take this card here and it lays out what happens on the card and you follow it from left to right. And so there's a couple options. One will be this symbol, which is attacking the closest target. There's also an eyeball symbol, which indicates it's attacking the furthest target. And so when we look at the game board, we can basically see that the closest target is the same because you'll count nodes. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And so in this case, you're going to look at the threat token here. And so I can see that the sword and shield character has a threat of 9, and then the bow character has a threat of 8. So in this case, it would choose to attack the hunter with the higher threat. So then you're going to look at the next step, which is the movement. And so this, if it's to the right or left, that creature is going to move to the right or left, and then it will maintain visual contact with its target. So you can look at the monster and you can see it has different quadrants. So it's like the front of the monster, the sides, as well as the back, and it's broken up by these lines here. And so that will determine which direction the monster is facing. And so this is important because as you attack the monster and as the monster attacks, they will be attacking in different ranges indicated on the attack card. And so in this case, the Jargus said to move 1 to the right. So I'll just do 1 to the right. And then again, it will look at its target. And so there's some key indicators here on the card. So this symbol, which is a little yellow target, is the range of the attack. So it would attack within 2 nodes away from the monster. You can see this indicator showing where the monster is going to attack. And so it'll be the front of the monster, the right, and the back, as it's doing a right belly roll, so that makes sense. It will damage, front and back and the side on the right side. You'll also look on the bottom left. This is the dodge value. And so this is what your character will need to do to dodge the attack. And then the bottom right would indicate any status effects that this attack may cause. And so again, if I look at the board, my character is actually out of range, so I don't need to worry about dodging it. But if I were to be in range, let's say, for example, I was here, that's in range of the attack, and then I would need to dodge it if I chose or take damage accordingly. And so how dodging works is that each character, to start their turn, is going to draw 5 cards. And so each character will have these in their hands. And so when we look at the card, they will have a dodge value in the top right. And so that shows how much each card is worth. And so if I wanted to dodge, in this case, the dodge value was 3. So I would need to play 3 cards from my hand face down on my stamina board, and I would start going left to right. And so these basically eat up a space, making them useless on your attack until you can remove them throughout the game. So let's say, again, I dodge that, that's now full up, and so the monster wouldn't do any damage. The other option I could do would be to not dodge, and so in that case, you can see in the middle of that symbol, it would do 7 physical damage. And so if I chose to not dodge anything, I would need to look at my card to see how much damage the monster would do. And so again, let's say I chose not to dodge. If that was the case, I would need to determine how much damage I would take from the enemy attack. And so to do that, you're going to look at the defense symbols on the armor that you have equipped. In this case, I only have a 1 listed under the leather mail. And so I would take the damage of 7 minus the 1. And so then my character would take 6 damage. And so again, if I looked at the dial, I would need to turn this down to 2 because your starting health is 8. And then I would bring it down to 2. Again, that was just kind of a hypothetical example of how you might deal with that attack. but we'll go to how the scenario was actually set up in this case, so I would not need to dodge that. And then I would continue to move on to see what happens after that. And so this top right symbol indicates how many turns the players will take after the monster does the attack. And then this bottom symbol indicates how many cards each player could take on their turn. So in this case, you could take 2 hunter turns, and each turn they could play 2 cards. And so to determine who could take turns, you'll simply need to look at the hunter tokens here and see which ones are face up or face down. If they're face down, that person could not take a turn. However, if they're face up, they could take a turn. So again, determine that amongst your team who have face up tokens, and then choose which one would want to take a turn. From there, you'll move on to the hunter's turn, and they'll be utilizing the cards in their hand and taking actions based on that. Now, in terms of the hunter turn, there's a few different aspects you can do. There's either combat actions or preparation actions. And so it's kind of broken up into 2 different categories on how you want to approach your turn. You can really either have them take combat or preparation actions, not really a combination of both. And so in terms of combat actions, you can play attack cards, which would be dictated by the number on the monster card. So in this last example, you were able to play 2 cards per turn. And so you'll look at your hero cards and they'll have different actions on them, some different symbols that you'll see. So again, as I mentioned, this is the dodge symbol that you could use when an enemy's attacking. This bottom symbol here relates to the range of the attack. Some cards will have this middle symbol, which is a break symbol. This means if you're attacking one of the spots on the monster that has a section that can be broken off, you'll add that number of break tokens. There's also a combo symbol. This indicates how many cards you need to have face up in your stamina bar to activate this card. Typically, these are finishing moves, so you'll see kind of the end of the stamina bar here, and this is most often you'll be playing in the last space on the card, as this would indicate that it ends your turn. Some cards also have a movement symbol. This means that when you play it, you can move your character that many spaces. And again, this is the number of damage cards you would draw if you played that symbol. And so again, in this case, if I looked at my archer's hand, I could play one of these cards. And again, sometimes it has extra text or abilities that will activate on the card. But let's say I just decide to play 2 of these basic shot cards, place it from the far left side. And then again, in this case, I would draw 2 damage cards worth of damage if I chose to play those attack cards. So again, I'll draw 2 for my damage deck. I would do 2 damage in this case, so I could move the monster dial down 2 hit points. On top of that, for a combat action, another option you have is to walk. And so as part of this combat action, you can move 1 node's worth of spaces on the board. You could also sprint. So 1 walk move is basically free on your turn, but then if you wanted to sprint or move additional steps, you can play a card face down on your stamina board, as long as there's open spaces, to move 1 extra space per card. So let's say, for example, I wanted to sprint to get more in range of the monster. I could play 2 cards face down to move 2 extra spaces beyond the initial 1. And so those are the combat actions you could play. You could also do preparation actions, which consist of things like using a potion. So if you have a potion in your inventory, which you can gain throughout the story and during that exploration phase and the first part of your turn, that would fully heal your character, and it also clears off your stamina board. You can decide to sharpen, and so what that does, it actually takes your discarded damage pile and you'll shuffle it back into the draw pile. One thing to note is that if you had so many cards that you needed to draw based on the attack cards that you had played from the damage deck and there wasn't enough present, you just simply don't draw anymore and you don't do damage. So if you've fully played your entire damage deck and need to draw something else, you just don't do any damage. So it's very important to sharpen when your damage pile is full or close to being full. And then the same walk and sprint actions apply on a preparation style turn as well. Again, when it comes to damaging monsters, if you did one of those attacks, let's say I drew 2 damage worth of cards, depending on my positioning and where I was attacking on the monster, you can see the location here on where you might be attacking. So this one would be on the sides where you might be attacking. This one, again, might be the body. This one could be the head. So depending on where you're attacking the monster, you'll see they have different defense levels, potential protection on hand. You'll see the number of tokens required to break that appendage. And then you can also see some of them list something that happens if you do break that appendage. So for this case, for example, if you broke this part, the monster would suffer 5 extra damage. The advantage of breaking appendages is that, again, it has these added benefits here, but also the final phase, once you've defeated the monster, you collect rewards. And so there's rewards listed on the back, and if you've broken different appendages on the monster, you get bonus rewards for free. Once you've gone through the different actions you can take on your turn, be it either a combat action or a preparation action, you'll move on to ending your turn. To end out your turn, you'll take a few extra steps. First, you're going to draw a time card and resolve its effects. So again, you just simply follow the steps listed on the card. So you'll flip your hunter token face down. You'll discard an attack card from the rightmost slot on your stamina board. So again, this will basically get discarded and free up that next space. You can choose to discard any number of cards from your hand and draw back up to 5 cards. And then again, you'll follow the next step listed on here. So in this case, you can move up to 1 node for up to 2 hunters. And then you'll simply discard this. And so again, if you run out of time cards and you need to draw one and there isn't one available, or if you're instructed to discard a time card and there isn't one available, you actually would lose this encounter. And so again, you're going to follow the instructions listed on the monster card. In this case, I could take 2 turns in a row before going back to the monster's turn. And so again, I would need to find another hunter who had a face-up token here, and then they could play 2 cards from their hand as well, if they chose to do a combat action, or they could do a preparation action as well. One thing to note is that once all of the hero tokens have been turned over to the used side, you'll actually flip them all over back to the usable side, meaning you'll have free reign again to choose which hero would take the next action. If you haven't failed the mission and the monster isn't defeated, it'll then go back to the monster's turn, and they will again start that phase over by drawing a new card and following the steps listed on it. At this time, if you have slain the monster or have failed, you'll move on to the HQ phase. Alright, so as you move on to the HQ phase, there's a few steps that you'll be able to take there. First, you're going to discard all of your attack cards and reshuffle them back in, forming your draw deck for the attack cards. So do that. You'll also reshuffle all of your damage cards, forming the damage deck again. And so again, going into your next encounter, these will all be shuffled and full, giving you all of your abilities to take on the next challenge. You'll also fill your health back to full, so turn this back to 8, making sure that you're fully healed. Also be sure to reshuffle the elemental damage cards here to reform that deck prior to the next encounter. If you failed your quest, you'll simply proceed on to taking on your next quest, but if you succeeded, you'll actually be able to gain rewards from defeating the monster. So the one thing you'll want to check is the reward table, and so based on the number of hunters that you played this quest with will indicate how many dice you'll roll, and then also depending on what type of quest you took on, whether it's an assigned quest, investigation, or tempered investigation, will determine how many die you roll as well. So let's say, for example, I rolled 3 die. I have a 4, 4, and a 1. I'm then going to consult the reward table and take different rewards accordingly. So if I did break any specific parts on the monster, I would automatically gain that reward. However, in addition to that, I can combine the dice rolls that I have or use the dice individually to gain items as well. So for example, with that 4 I rolled, I could take a Great Jargus Scale as a reward. And let's say I broke this part of the monster, I could take a Great Jargus Claw. I can also combine the dice. So I had 2 4s and a 1. So I could take 1 Monster Bone Small by combining my dice together. So again, collect your rewards, and then you'll move back to the HQ phase to forge new weapons and armor. So you'll have this reference guide for both weapons and armor. And so you'll be able to create these items if you have the corresponding matching items in your inventory. You can just do this automatically in the HQ phase if you have the corresponding items. One thing to note is that the armor, if you have all the items, you can just make it automatically. However, when you're looking at the weapon side, you will need the precursor weapon to make a more advanced version. So if you don't yet have a hunter's bow, or if you don't yet have an iron bow, you will not be able to make a steel bow in this case if you didn't build the corresponding iron bow first. And again, as you progress and build these new items, you can equip one of them. And so again, you get the added benefit when you build these new items to add them to your deck, and you'll also enhance the damage cards you'll be drawing and constructing your deck with. This can make your attacks more powerful as you go through the game. You'll also be adding and removing different skill cards based on the weapons that you have and equip. And so again, you'll be adding more powerful attacks as you upgrade your weapon, in addition to more powerful damage. Once you've decided to forge new armor and weapons and you've completed that, you'll actually move on to the next quest. And so you've got a couple options here. You could take on the same monster at a more difficult quest. Again, you'll follow that same choose your own adventure style, but you'll have different starting points you can choose from, a lower time card option in this case, or you can move on to trying to challenge another monster. So for example, we might move on to this monster and start with the assigned quest. You need to defeat the first assigned quest of a monster initially before taking on more challenging versions. And again, the goal is to take on a 4-star monster within the campaign day limit. And so again, you have a campaign day tracker. Typically, the game recommends doing 25 days for your maximum. And so each quest where you take on a monster counts as 1 day. There is some options where you can spend additional time around the HQ doing various activities, and I'll dive into that as well, and those count as 1 day as well. So you can refer to page 48 in the quest book, and it gives you some different downtime activities you can take part in. And so if you choose to spend a day in this option, you'll be able to select up to 3 activities that you perform. Some of them you can do multiple times in a day, like visiting the resource center. This gives you an option to roll to get potentially great items that you could use to upgrade your equipment. You can visit the provision stockpile, visit the chef, pet the Poogie, and much more. And so again, this is something that you can do on your off days, and you'll spend 1 day to use these actions. Again, as you progress, you can mark down what monster items you have, different equipment you gain, how many potions you have on hand, and much more. And so as you progress, you can continue on from where you last left off in your campaign to try and complete that goal of defeating a 4-star monster. But overall, that's really the general idea on how the game works. There is some more intricate rules and details like status effects when you're attacking monsters, both on your end inflicting status effects and receiving status effects. And there's some more details around attacking enemies from different positions, terrain items, and more. So definitely refer to the full rule book for more details on that. But again, that gives you a general idea on how the game works. And so with that said, let's jump into my review. Well, again, now that you have a better idea on how the game works, how do I actually feel about it? Well, I really enjoyed playing this game. It really felt like you were playing Monster Hunter World, the video game, but more so in a board game format. I think Steamforged Games does a really good job of that in the variety of games they create. For example, they have a Dark Souls board game, they have a Resident Evil board game, they also have this Monster Hunter World board game, and I feel like they do a great job of translating the feel that you get of playing the game and making that into a great board game version. Now, I will say the game is quite complex and it has a bit of a steep learning curve to it. I think our first game, it took about an hour and a half to 2 hours to play through, but then we ended up playing for about 7 hours straight, going through different monster hunts and continuing the campaign. So it was definitely a lot of fun once we learned how the game functions and really each phase of the game, but it did feel quite complex trying to grasp all of those different rules. But again, once I think you get the hang of it, it flows very well and is really a lot of fun. It is a cooperative game, and so you'll be playing as multiple different hunters on your quest to take down a 4-star hunt. And you definitely felt that progression as you went through more difficult hunts. And then also the rewards after the hunts were a lot of fun, where you could get items, power up your equipment, improve your weapons, buy new armor, and much more. And so I did like that RPG element to it, and you did really feel that progression as well. As you collect different armor, you'll be able to unlock special abilities related to that armor. You'll gain defenses that might help you against certain monster types. And you can also unlock various weapons, improving your abilities, unlocking new skills and attack features, but also increasing the damage that you do overall with the weapons. And so I like that aspect to it. You'll also pick an overall length of your campaign. So that might be 20 days, 25 days, 30 days, whatever you decide on. And then each one of those hunts ends up being 1 day. And then you can also do options where you stay in town to maybe gather some more resources to help you upgrade equipment. I did also really like the choose your own adventure aspect. And so as you're preparing for the hunt, you'll be exploring different areas through more of a choose your own adventure. And so this was cool. You never really knew what was coming. You have different choices you could face and get certain rewards, or maybe progress the hunt more quickly and avoid potential bad cards entering your time deck, different things like that. And so I thought that was a cool element to it and added some additional replay value to the game. I also felt that your characters really played very differently. And so whether you're playing solo, if you're playing with multiple players, whatever the case might be, each player will choose a specific hunter they want to play as. And I felt like their weapons, their play style, and cards that they had in their deck really played different. And so that was cool, where we would play off each other and our strengths to help defeat the different monsters we were going against. For example, I played as the dual blade hunter and another friend was playing as the great sword hunter. And so they were functioning more as like a tank character, absorbing a lot of the damage. And I was able to go in quickly and deal a lot of damage and kind of run away. And so I thought that was cool, where each character really had their own vibe to it. And then as we powered up our weapons, one got really strong at dealing elemental damage and a lot of overall damage. And then mine could play almost my entire damage deck at once, doing a flurry of attacks, dealing a lot of damage that way as well. And so again, that was really cool, and I think that will add to the replay value. Again, you maybe will be playing with a party of 2 or playing solo, or again, playing as a party of 4, and you'll definitely have a different experience each time you go through the game. There's a lot of different equipment you can craft, be it armor and weapons, and so that was fun deciding what hunts we wanted to go on. You have the ability to kind of trade items between heroes as well, so you didn't really feel like you were missing out on anything. And again, you could work together to help each other to get the best equipment to be able to take down these big monsters. Again, I think you'll get a lot of enjoyment out of this game. It has a very long play time, as I mentioned. We played for about 6-7 hours our first session, completing several hunts in one, but again, we weren't even close to completing the campaign. So if you decide to finish a full campaign or play multiple campaigns, you'll definitely get a lot out of this game if you feel like you like these dungeon crawling RPG style board games. Overall, I had a blast and I thought it was a lot of fun. I would definitely recommend it, especially if you're a fan of the Monster Hunter series. It's a great version of the series in board game form, and I would definitely recommend it. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Have you played any of the Monster Hunter board games yet? Are you a fan of the video game series? Does this look like a fun translation to you? Let me know in the comments below. And if you did want to pick up a copy of this game, there'll be a link in the description below where you can do so. And if you like this video, be sure to hit that like button as it really helps out the channel. And if you'd like to help support the channel, pick out content and more, consider becoming a patron of ours over at nerdproblemsgaming.com/Patreon. And another really cool way you can help support the channel is we actually partnered with a game store, Nutmeg Games. So you can head to nutmeggames.com/nerdproblemsgaming or use our promo code nerdproblemsgaming at checkout. You'll get 10% off your order and help support the channel at the same time. So again, if you like things like board games, Pokemon cards, Magic cards, and more, be sure to head there and use our discount code to save money on your order and help support us at the same time. And again, if you like videos like this on video games, board games, and everything nerdy, check out one of our other videos here. And if you haven't done so yet, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell notifications to get the latest updates of new nerd videos we put out. But once again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you more soon.